This is Israel Take 3, and I'm David Began. This season has generously been sponsored by the Sclair Family Foundation. Stick with us.
I need to give. I need to give to Am Israel. I need to go to army. I need to go to work, to Gaza, to Lebanon, wherever the Am Israel need me.
I'm speaking with Aviv Abebe. He lives in Arad, in southern Israel, with his wife and his 4 kids. And Aviv has spent over 300 days in uniform since October 7th. 300 days. It's almost a year. Away from his home, his job, everything. That's what I met with Aviv to discuss. But the conversation took a different turn. Because the first thing he told me, before the tanks, before the army, was this. He doesn't know how old he is.
I don't know when my age, because in Ethiopia, we don't have hospital, we don't have electric, nothing.
Wait, 1 second. You don't know how old you are?
Yes.
You mean, how old do you think you are?
I think, we guess, right? we don't know, but now we say like 33.
Imagine that, not knowing your age, one of the most basic facts that most of us carry around with us. Our name, our birthday, our age. It's automatic, right? My first reaction was, that must be really hard. But then I paused for a minute and I thought about it. Actually, maybe that's amazing. Not to know your age, no number randomly telling you that it's too late or too soon to try something. No inner voice telling you, come on, you're 54. That's when people start taking up bird watching, not when they reinvent themselves. Aviv was born in Ethiopia, and he came to Israel as a child who just didn't know his birthday. All he knew was goats and hills and silence, because his father passed away when he was 6 months old, and he became the family shepherd. He thinks maybe he was 5 or 6 at the time. He came from a village that was started by his grandfather, a real visionary, who founded a village just for Jewish families in rural Ethiopia. And he raised his children and his grandchildren with one simple mission: to get to Jerusalem. And eventually, Aviv and his mother did just that.
My Saba is my grandpa, and his brother make this village just for Jews. I remember, we dream about Eretz Israel, about Yerushalayim. Eretz Israel is not correct. We just for Yerushalayim. It's for us to be in Yerushalayim is just dream. Just dream. I don't care about age. This is what we need to think about this. This is what we need to say for us. Everyone for us. Doesn't matter.
Today's episode is about just that. It's about what happens when you remove the artificial limits that age puts on us. And it's about the courage to do what no one else your age is supposed to do.
Shalom. You are standing at the commemoration site built in the memory of the fallen in the battles over the Jewish quarter during the War of Independence in 1948.
I'm standing here in the Jewish quarter of the old city, and it's kind of surreal. These stones, like everything around here, they've seen thousands of years of history and of struggle. And behind me, I'm not sure if you can hear it or not, these kids are playing soccer during recess. And their voices are echoing off these walls that have seen sieges and battles and destruction. It's beautiful, honestly. And it makes it really hard to believe what happened here not that long ago. Because right under my feet, there's this mass grave, a real one. It held bodies of soldiers and civilians, Jews, who died defending this neighborhood in 1948 during Israel's War of Independence. And one of them was a boy. His name was Nisim Gini. He was 9 years old when the war started. Not a soldier, just a kid. But not for long. because he refused to stay home. Okay, so let's rewind. It's May 14th, 1948. Israel declares independence. Literally the next day, 5 Arab armies attack. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. Oh yeah, and some volunteers from Saudi Arabia too. And here in the Jewish quarter, there are about 1,600 Jews. Men, women, children, totally cut off. No real weapons, no backup. Facing them, the Jordanian Arab Legion, the best trained army in the Middle East. And in the middle of that chaos, you have this boy, Nisim, 9 years old. He was born in 1938. His father, Yitzchak, was from Turkey. His mother, Miriam, was from Morocco. They lived right here in the old city. His father was trapped outside the city when the fighting started. And his mom, she was blind. She had 4 kids at home. His sister, Chaya, she was 14. And she did her best. She helped out in the makeshift hospital. His brother, Natan, was 12, and he ran food and supplies to the soldiers. And Nisim, just 9 years old, couldn't bear to sit still. By day, he'd run messages and food through alleyways, the kind of narrow paths that only children know how to navigate. And at night, he snuck past enemy lines, spied on the Jordanians, and brought back information that probably saved lives. And yeah, this was real. People saw him doing this. Bullets flying. He's darting between buildings like it's nothing. Then comes May 27th, the last day of the battle. That morning, Nisim had come home for a quick hot meal, probably his first in a while. And there's a knock at the door. It's a soldier, an older guy. He says his replacement didn't show up, and he needs someone to take lookout duty. His mom begs him not to go. She's already terrified, but Nisim looks at her and says, "What do you want, Mom? That I should stay here while others die?" And that's it. He goes. He runs through the old city, bullets flying everywhere, and he makes it to his lookout post, just near where Porat Yosef Yeshiva is today. He lifts his head to scan the area. A Jordanian sniper was waiting, and the bullet hits him. They carried his body, bleeding, to Bate Machsa, where his sister Chaya was helping in the hospital, and she did everything she could, but there was no equipment, no medicine, and the next day, Nisim Gini died. That same day, May 28th, the Jewish quarter fell. The fighters surrendered. The rabbi of the quarter, Rabbi Ben Zion Chazan, raised a white flag. 500 Jews were taken prisoner. The rest were expelled. And then the Jordanians destroyed everything in the old city, including all the synagogues. Nisim's body, along with 7 others, was buried right here, where I'm standing, underneath my feet, in a mass grave. Next to me, there's this open square, and those same kids are playing soccer. You can hear them screaming, laughing, stalling on going back to class, doing what 9-year-olds are supposed to be doing. So for 19 years, no Jews set foot here. Then in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel somehow won again and reunified Jerusalem and took back the old city. And a few days later, an elderly Arab man approached this Israeli officer, and he told him, "I know where some Jewish bodies are buried. The Jordanians wanted to burn them, but I stopped them." The IDF came, they dug up the site. They couldn't identify the bodies, except for one, a child, identified because he still had his baby teeth. It was Nisim. He was reburied on Har Zeitim, the Mount of Olives, with full military honors, and was recognized as the youngest soldier ever to fight and fall in the IDF. He was 9 years old. He wasn't trained. He wasn't even tall enough to hold a rifle, but he showed up. He ran through bullets. He saved lives. He refused to stay home while others died. And that's where I'm standing right now. And as I say all this, I can still hear those kids behind me, playing soccer, shouting, laughing. It's exactly what 9-year-olds should be doing. When I was 9, I was fiddling around with my new Panasonic tape deck and making those silly podcasts before anyone even heard of podcasts. Also a pretty normal 9-year-old activity. But for some people, age just seems irrelevant. And maybe that's exactly what connects them, Aviv, Abebe, and Nisim Gini. One doesn't even know how old he is. The other never cared how young he was. Neither of them allowing age to define what they were capable of. Aviv fights like a man with nothing holding him back. Not a number, not a box. And Nisim, he was 9, but in the middle of a war, he wasn't asking how old he was. He was asking what needed to be done. Courage has nothing to do with age. Maybe it comes from not letting age get in the way. And this brings us to our main character of this episode, Ezra Yachin. Ezra knows something about the irrelevance of age. In fact, he turned 98 yesterday, and he is still serving today in the IDF, the oldest IDF soldier in the history of Israel.
Nisim Gini, I know his family, and I know about him how he was the youngest soldier maybe in history. He was our fighter. He was, I think, 80 years old when he was killed in the battlefield in the old city.
What else can you tell us about him? What did you hear about him?
I know that he ran into the fire all the time to bring to the fighters ammunition and supporting them until he got hit by bullets by enemy's bullets and was killed.
Ezra knows a little something about the irrelevance of age. He's still actively serving in the Israeli Defense Forces today. Nisim Gini was the youngest person to ever serve in the Israeli army. Ezra Yachin, he's the oldest. Sitting with Ezra in his living room in the only Jewish apartment building in an Arab neighborhood of East Jerusalem, staring across at this man who's with a baggy IDF uniform draped over his bony frame, I thought of an old quote from Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige, one of the greatest pitchers in baseball history. He had an unusual philosophy on aging. You see, because of the color of his skin, Paige was blocked from Major League Baseball until 1948, when he was already 42 years old. He played professional baseball well into his late 50s, and despite his age, he dominated the sport, proving that passion and skill can outweigh traditional notions of youth and athleticism.
Jack, I don't think this is my last year. I think I can play baseball about 15 or 20 more years. Well, I'm going to keep up with Landon.
the way you throw that ball, I think you'll do all right.
So Paige once asked a reporter, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? Wow. Why do we let age define our abilities and our aspirations? If we weren't aware of how old we should be, we might just accomplish far more than we thought possible. And that's what I was thinking of as I sat across from this Israeli legend.
As you see me, still, I serve as a soldier in the Israeli army, as a reserver, and it's not new. I started to join fighters for our freedom when I was 15 and a half years old. And I'm so proud to serve in the most important activity, which is the service as a soldier, as a fighter, for sake of our people. One thing bothers me.
We will get to that one thing that bothers him soon. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about Ezra. People often say that Israel has fought many wars over the past 80 years. The reality is that Israel's really only been fighting one single ongoing war for its entire existence. This struggle began even before the state was established in 1948, and it continues to this day, with brief lulls in between battles, but no true resolution. The enemy takes on different forms, but really remains the same. Those who have never accepted Israel's right to exist and remain committed to its destruction. Ezra Yachin, who joined the Lehi as a teenager, before Israel was even a state, has witnessed and participated in every single chapter of this enduring conflict. Some people read about history, others witness it. Ezra has lived it. Ezra was born in 1928 in Jerusalem's Old City, where Nissim Guinea fought to his death, back when the British controlled the land. And by the time he was a teenager, he had already joined the fight to kick them out. He became a member of the Lehi, also known as the Stern Gang, a Jewish underground paramilitary group that saw the British as occupiers and wanted them gone by any means necessary. And let's be real, being in the Lehi wasn't some theoretical sit around and argue political movement. It was dangerous. Ezra carried out sabotage missions, gathered intelligence, spread anti-British propaganda, and even survived a British attack that left him severely wounded. Okay, fast forward to 1948, the War of Independence. And Ezra was right there, fighting in one of the most pivotal moments in Jewish history. The war was brutal. 6,000 Jews, 1% of Israel's entire population at that time, were killed. But Israel won, and Ezra was a part of that victory. After the war, Ezra moved on. He became an historian, an educator, someone who spent his life teaching about Israel's struggle for survival. But that fire, that passion, it never left. Then, October 7th, 2023 happened. Hamas launches the deadliest attack in Israel's history, and suddenly Ezra Yachin knew exactly what he had to do. At the time, he was 95 years old. He volunteers to return to service, not to fight on the front lines. His battles with a rifle ended long ago, but to do something just as important, to inspire. And so today, just before young Israeli soldiers go into battle, Ezra Yachin walks in. He looks them in the eyes, and he tells them what it was like to fight for Israel before it even existed. He tells them that they're a part of a chain of history that goes back thousands of years, and that their mission to protect Israel is the same mission he had when he was their age. And they listen, because here's a guy who lived through it all, and he's still standing and still fighting with his words, with his presence, with his very existence. Ezra Yachin is still in the fight, maybe not with a rifle, but with something even stronger, his story. And for every soldier who hears him speak, for every young Israeli who wonders if the struggle is worth it, Ezra is there to remind him, it always has been, and it always will be. Now, back to that one thing that's bothering him.
I witnessed a very, very painful price to establish our freedom and having our independent state of Israel. We experienced the terrible Holocaust in expectation that the Jews all over the world will understand that their place is here in the land of Israel. What are millions of Jews doing in Europe, in America? They complain about anti-Semitism. Do we miss anything in this country? We have the sweetest fruit in the world. We have various of tasty cheeses, which you can choose and you can enjoy. We have weather, wonderful weather up on the hills in Judea and Samaria and the Galil. We have whatever you can choose to live properly. What are you doing in America, in Europe? We need you here, and you need being here. If you would have been here, we would have doubled our power, our know-how, our possibility in a case that no enemy would dare attacking us. Come here. Come here. This is your place. You won't be sorry. Not only I, not only our people. The land is expecting for you. The air is expecting for you. God is expecting for you to be here. He took us out of Egypt, not to live in America, to be in this land. He chose this land for you, for us, for the Jewish people.
Okay, I'll end the guilt trip there. But just so you know, Ezra didn't stop. He actually kept on going and going on this topic until I finally launched in to some of my other questions. But his sentiments reminded me of something that David Ben-Gurion, Israel's great pioneer and first prime minister, once said. For 2 millennia, the Jewish people had lived in exile, scattered around the world, lacking a sovereign homeland. And Ben-Gurion was frustrated that after he declared the state, that more Jews from the diaspora didn't pick up their lives and head to the newly formed Jewish state. The land was now under Jewish sovereignty, but it lacked the critical mass of Jewish inhabitants needed to secure and develop it. And he famously quipped, "For 2,000 years we were a people without a country, and now we are a country without a people." Okay, that's a powerful message. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and you can share. But one thing is that I'm just going to move this a little bit because the microphone is very sensitive. So when your hands touch the table, it makes a sound. So try to keep your hands if you can. I knew that wasn't going to work, so I apologize for the pounding. But just know that's really part of who Ezra is. He's somebody who doesn't just speak with his lips. He speaks with his entire body, pure passion. If we were going to try to talk about your entire military service, we would be here for weeks because you started serving before the state. You were a member of the Lehi. You fought in the War of Independence. So we can't obviously discuss everything, but maybe if you can share with us some of the highlights of your career. I'd like to hear about fighting in the Lehi. I'd like to hear about, I know you were born in the Old City, and I know your house was attacked in 1929 by the Arab mobs. I want to hear about that. I want to hear about your role in the War of Independence. And then maybe if you can just list for us the wars that you fought in and participated in this country.
During my lifetime, I've seen painful things. In Europe, we know what happened to Jews in Europe, the pogroms, and after pogroms, the Holocaust. And here also, Arabs murdered Jews. So being a child, I decided I'll grow up, I'll fight them. But not only them, also the British were our enemies. They denied us the right to come and live in our own country.
He's referring to what's known as the White Papers, which was the policy of the British, who ruled Palestine at the time, to severely limit Jewish immigration here. Widely seen as pandering to pressure from the local Arab leadership, the British essentially closed Palestine as an option for immigration for the millions of Jews trapped inside of Hitler's grasp, and by doing so condemned them to genocide.
The result was terrible. They blocked, during the Holocaust, they blocked the way to life from Jews in Europe. 7 ships sunk in the seas, along with thousands of Jews, because the British blocked their way to life. But the worst was all those who stayed in Europe and did their getting out of Europe because they knew they didn't want to become with their bodies to feed the fish. And they stayed in Europe in the hands of Hitler because of the British. So during World War II, it's true that the British fought the Germans, but in a way they cooperated with the Germans and with the Europeans in committing the worst crimes in history against the Jews.
Spoken like a true Lehi loyalist. So there was this debate going on during World War II in pre-state Palestine regarding how to relate to the British. On one hand, they were fighting Hitler in Europe, and it only made sense to support their efforts in any way possible. And yet, on the other hand, they were seen as hindering the formation of the Jewish state. The White Papers stopping the flow of Jewish immigration was just one of the many ways they did this. Ben-Gurion and his Haganah ascribed to the motto, "We shall fight alongside the British in the war as if there were no White Papers, and we shall fight the White Papers as if there were no war." This was the impossible balancing act of the Jewish agency in 1939. The British, on the one hand, were the key to defeating Nazi Germany. On the other hand, they had just issued a policy that slammed the gates of Palestine shut to Jewish refugees fleeing Europe. So the Jews of Palestine did both. They fought in the British army while simultaneously defying British immigration laws, smuggling in refugees, and laying the groundwork for statehood. It was a paradox, but it was survival. But Ezra didn't belong to the Haganah, and he didn't ascribe to Ben-Gurion's approach. He was fighting for the Lechi, the Lochamei Cherut Israel, or the fighters for the freedom of Israel, who took a radically different stance from Ben-Gurion and the mainstream Zionist leadership. While the Haganah under Ben-Gurion's leadership followed the dual policy of fighting the Nazis while cooperating with the British, the Lechi saw Britain as the primary enemy and refused any collaboration. The Lechi viewed the British as occupiers who were blocking Jewish statehood, and they believed that the British presence in Palestine was a greater immediate threat to the Jewish people than Nazi Germany. As long as the British controlled Palestine, there was no hope of rescuing Europe's Jews or establishing Jewish sovereignty. So while the Haganah and the even more militant Irgun refrained from attacking the British during World War II, the Lechi carried out assassinations, bombings, and attacks on British officials and infrastructure. And this is kind of insane, but in 1940, the Lechi even attempted to negotiate with Nazi Germany to make an alliance with them against the British in exchange for facilitating Jewish immigration to Palestine. The Lechi's and Ezra's position was clear. The British were the main obstacle to Jewish independence, and their removal from Palestine was an absolute priority, even if it meant fighting them in the middle of the war.
They called us the Stern Gang, because it was founded by Abraham Stern. He organized the group, he found the group and headed it, but unfortunately, because people didn't understand him, our establishment incited against him, and the British must have been that got information from our own people about the place he was hiding in Tel Aviv, and they got him. They handcuffed him and shot at him and murdered him when he was handcuffed. But his followers, with the time, managed, because most of them were in jail. Some of them managed to escape, like Yitzhak Shamir, who reorganized the group, and this is the time where I joined also.
Okay, take us to the War of Independence. What did you do in that war? What was your role? I know you were injured. Maybe you can tell us about that as well.
Well, I started being a young boy. I was 14. To feed the family, I had to start working when I was 14.
Where did you work when you were 14? What did you do?
At the post office, as a messenger boy, I used to deliver telegrams and happened to be able to get hold and copy telegrams sent by the central authorities in London to their officials in the land of Israel. And this way we could know much of their plans.
As a 14-year-old boy, you were intercepting messages from London to the command here and copying them and giving them to the
underground, yes, to meeting in the underground. With the time also I joined with a small group who had to explain to people that the British are enemies. People didn't understand it. Despite the fact that they acted as enemies, they blocked the way of Jews to come here. They were foreign rulers, and it was our country, we want to be free. So we had to explain to the people why we have to fight the British and to establish a Jewish state, to enable Jews to come here, to enable us to feel as a free nation. I joined with the fighting force, which was I also aimed to fight with firearms. I planned to execute to kill the British Army commander, what he called the GOC, General Officer Commanding of the British Army in the country, because I was working in the post office, I could get to his office to bring mail there. And I saw him every morning. I saluted him, and he returned salute, and he didn't know that I planned to kill him. But it didn't work out because, unfortunately, the British got information from Jews about our plan. So I joined the Lehi, and we fought the British. And then we had to fight the Arabs. And I experienced great heroes, how my friends beside me fell in the battlefield, how some of them were sentenced to death and hung on gallows. My best friend was tortured to death by British officers trying to get from him information in vain until he died in their hands when he was 16 and a half years old. What was his name? Alexander Ubovich. Until now, no one knows where he's been buried because the British didn't want that people will see the signs of torture in his body. And until now, no one knows where he's been buried by them.
And then you started fighting you were involved in the liberation.
We took all kinds of fighting. We blew the traffic in the roads. We blew their trains. We penetrated to their camps, into their headquarters, and blew them in different tricks. And we all fought. And they did everything. They brought here 100,000 troops against such few fighters. It didn't help them. Defending themselves with enormous quantities of barbed wire, of sandbags. It didn't help them. With God's help, we managed to defeat them until they understood. But we paid a price, as I said, despite the help that they got from Jews, especially the Jewish establishment, and we managed to establish the Jewish state. And then the Arabs started their great attacks against us, and we had to feed them as well. And in this fight, I was badly wounded in my head, trying to break into the old city. 2 bombshells hit my head. My right eye's been blinded. And during the operation, they dug holes in my skull to take off the torn pieces of my brain from the bombs. And this piece of brain which had been left in my head, how am I? I survived. All my friends who survived from then, with the time, passed away, became old, and I'm still alive.
More than still alive. You're still alive and strong and powerful. Like any war, the War of Independence has no shortage of controversy, but few events have been as fiercely debated as what happened in Deir Yassin, the small Arab village just west of Jerusalem. The classic, whitewashed Zionist narrative paints it as a brutal but necessary battle, house-to-house fighting, enemy combatants mixed with civilians, tragic but inevitable in the fog of war. The more critical historians call it something far darker, a massacre, cold-blooded killings, an atrocity that cast a long shadow over Israel's founding. I've always wondered where the truth lies, and now I had a chance to ask somebody who didn't just read about it in a history book, but he lived it. Ezra was there. He marched into Deir Yassin with the Lehi, rifle in hand. He saw everything, heard everything, and has carried it with him for over 75 years. And if you've been listening, you may have picked up on one thing. Ezra is not a whitewasher. So even though it was off topic, I couldn't resist. I had to ask him. I know that you were in Deir Yassin, that you were part of that unit. So can you tell us what really happened there?
Well, you can read in my books. We were ordered to use a loudspeaker to warn them that we don't want to hurt women and children. And with a loudspeaker, we call them to let women and children to get out, because if the men want to fight, we want to fight them. But this way we lost the surprise moment, and that's how they were ready, and they woke up and they started shooting at us, and we had to fight over every step. And because we lost the surprise, we had casualties, and we had to fight over every house, and that's the result.
Was there a massacre there?
There was no any wish to shoot straight to women or children. That didn't happen. But when a sniper shoot at your friends to kill them, and you shoot back or send a grenade into this house, it happened also that his family members get gone. That's
war.
That's the war. That's the rules of the war.
The claims that the IDF soldiers raped women in that village.
Well, the claims is to excuse their defeat, because they were sure that they're going to put an end to our existence. Like now in Gaza, before how they danced in the streets when they found that we've been kidnapped and murdered. All Gaza was dancing and handling to people all kinds of sweets and all that. But once we started attacking them, they begged for stopping the war, and they claimed that we kill innocent people, and that's them.
There you have it, straight from someone who fought in that deadly battle. Okay, it was time to move on. What was your greatest moment, the happiest moment, the most spectacular experience in your military career? Was it the War of Independence? Was it the 6-Day War?
The 6-Day War, when we got the word that Jerusalem has been liberated.
The 6-Day War, which began in June of 1967 as a desperate battle for survival when Israel was attacked by a coalition of Arab forces from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, became something entirely else when Israeli paratroopers broke through the Lion's Gate and reached the Western Wall. For the first time in almost 2,000 years, since the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, Jewish hands touched those stones as sovereigns, not as subjects. The moment was raw, overwhelming. Soldiers wept, shofars blew, and the words of General Matagur rang out over the radio, words that sent chills through an entire nation. Har Habayit biyadenu. The Temple Mount is in our hands. Tell me about that moment when you heard the words Har Habayit biyadenu.
Not only me, the whole Jews here blew in singing Yerushalayim shel zahav, Jerusalem of gold, Yerushalayim shel zahav, all over the country. Everybody sang it.
Can you sing a little bit of that for our listeners?
Vereach oranim ניסה ברוח ארבעים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבל שרויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדעת יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני Kinor, Kinor.
What a voice. Thank you. So that was the moment for you. Okay. Now a difficult question.
Yes.
The worst moment, the hardest moment that you remember since you were a child.
My best friend, Alexander Bovich, disappeared. And he was so friendly. We used to talk about everything. The kind of friendship which tied our ties with, I would say, with the glue of love to Israel. And suddenly I missed him so much. That was difficult for me. And the worst thing is during the war, but then while I was at the hospital, I got the word, because we were about to liberate the whole city. I got the word that because of the ceasefire, we left the whole city in the hands of the Arabs. And that was a terrible shock for me for 19 years. The pain of my head was, we could carry it, but the pain in the heart that all city stayed in the hands. It could have been in our hands. For 19 years, it was in the enemy's hand. This pain was very difficult for me.
Who is your biggest hero?
Alexander Lubovitch. If you read the book, Major Farran's Hat, you can see how he's been tortured. He's been hit by heavy clubs on his head. They cut his flesh with knives. They burned his flesh with burning cigarettes. And he won't tell them one word for more than 1 hour until this guy, Farran, took a rock and hit him on his head and broke his skull when he was 16 and a half years old. And now about this war.
Yeah, let me start with this question. October 7th, Simchat Torah, Shabbat, you're home maybe, or where you are you with your family celebrating?
I was with my children, I have 2 children living in Anatot. I was with them in Simchat Torah. Every Simchat Torah I'm there because they like how I dance around the Torah and all that. And then we got the word. My son, my grandson put on uniforms and expected to be recruited. My son was 55 years old, also was in the first day there, and he saw some of the terrible crimes committed by the Hamas. And I also saw they burned cars in Sderot. And my son was eager to carry revenge. They have no right to live. And he was among the first ones who got into Gaza. And he took part in the fighting. In one of the fighting, he was hit by a bullet who broke his ankle. Bone of his ankle been broken completely by the hole there. He was 4.5 months in 3 different hospitals. Terrible, painful experience of 7 operations until he started walking on his foot. He put again the uniform and he went to Jabalia and served again. Only this week he's been released. And my grandson was here until 2 weeks ago.
Are you keeping track of this? His 55-year-old son sees what's happening, pushes to join a combat unit, enters Gaza, gets shot. A few months later, he's back fighting in Jabalia in one of the fiercest battles of the war. And alongside him, his own son, Ezra's grandson, fighting in the same war. 3 generations still in the fight.
I wanted to ask you a question. I've been thinking a lot lately about courage. And I wanted to ask you, what is courage?
I want to tell you, when you are ready to give your life so something that you love, this gives you courage. And you love if you love a lot your people, you didn't think about the danger.
Were you surprised at all by how much courage the young generation of Israelis have shown in this last war?
Oh, I want to tell you, I have seen courage during my lifetime, as my friends were sentenced on the gallows. They sang Atikva with a smile in their face. But we were few at that time. Most of the people feared at that time. But today, everywhere I see courage. More than ever. If you would see what happened in the first day, how people ran into the fire to save lives. Not only soldiers, also Magen David Adom. They were not armed. They went there to save wounded. They were facing the Hamas and those who fought Hamas with almost nothing in their hands. They ran there to fight.
Many of you know that while Jerusalem is no longer officially divided like it was between 1948 and 1967, nonetheless it remains deeply split. Most neighborhoods are distinctly Jewish or Arab, with only a few places where the two populations mix. Beit Hanina, where Ezra lives, is not one of those places. It's an entirely Arab neighborhood, and Ezra's building is the only one with Jewish residents, which may explain why it stands behind a towering fence and an electric gate. His building is called Beit HaShiva. Shiva means 7. And that's because there are 7 apartments in this building that 7 Jewish families purchased right after the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. Ezra's was one of those families, and the point was to establish a Jewish presence in an area of Jerusalem where no Jews had lived before. As a general rule today, Jews don't wander into the Arab neighborhoods of East Jerusalem. Now, more than likely nothing's going to happen, but conventional wisdom says don't do it. In fact, I have a good friend who was thrilled when I offered him the chance to join me for the interview with Ezra. But when he asked where he lived, and I told him Beit Hanina, he texted me, not sure I'm comfortable going there. I think I'm going to pass. Sorry. So one thing I really wanted to ask Ezra was, why do you choose to live in an all-Arab neighborhood?
You can't ask a Jew why he lives in any place in Jerusalem. You can ask the Jews why they live in New York or in Paris or in London. You can't ask me why I live in Jerusalem. It is our Jerusalem. Jews have to be everywhere in this country, and I am here. Here I am.
Are we, Israel, the nation, the people of Israel, in a better place today than we were before October 7th? Do you think that everything that's happened in this war in the last year and a half has put us into a better position?
We were always strong, but we weakened ourselves, thinking that we have no enemies. We never looked at them as our enemies. That's our trouble. When you don't think they're enemies, you don't use your strength.
Wow. Is there anything else that you think that you want to share that we haven't spoken about yet? Or
never forget what they did to us and what they want to do to us. When they say they want to annihilate us, believe them.
Well, Ezra, I just want to say that sitting here with you in your house in Jerusalem has been one of the great honors of my career and my life. I spend a lot of time reading these stories. I didn't know there was anyone that still knew these stories and that could share them. Thank you so much for this. Very, very special. I'll never forget this time that we spent together.
welcome, and I hope that we will get out of this war with a great victory, that we will put an end to all these evilish enemies.
Think about this. A 9-year-old boy in the Jewish quarter sprinting through gunfire, carrying messages and ammunition like it's a game of hide and seek. And a 96-year-old man strapping on an IDF uniform, determined to fight a war that for him never really ended. Nisim Gini and Ezra Yachin, they couldn't be more different, separated by nearly a century. One just a child, the other old enough to be a great-grandfather. And yet they're cut from the same cloth. Not because of their age, but because for both of them, age never factored into the equation. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? But maybe Satchel Paige didn't ask the right question. Maybe the real question is, does it even matter? Because when everything is on the line, when your people are in danger, history doesn't stop to check how many candles are on your birthday cake. It only asks one thing. Do you have the courage to stand up and fight?